The rain over Ravenshollow had a patience that unnerved the town. It didn't fall so much as persist, needling every slate roof and cobblestone until the streets gleamed like wet glass. Down the narrow lane behind the old bakery, where the air smelled of yeast and damp brick, Daniel Whitmore leaned over the sill of his attic window and watched the street lamp flicker. The storm had dragged the internet into a sulk. His laptop blinked a resentful, no connection. Books were strewn like casualties across his desk. Latin notes, a half-marked essay for Street, Alden's College, a dog-eared copy of The War of the Worlds. He closed the book and let the quiet press in. The only sound, rain rattling the panes and the weary groan of the building settling like an old man in a chair. On the shelf above, his father's relic waited. A battered FM radio, leather handle cracked, dials worn to coins. It had survived more moves than Daniel remembered. His father claimed he'd once tuned Polish jazz on it while driving across Belgium in a summer long before Daniel existed. It looked stubborn, like an animal that refused to die. He took it down, thumbed grit from the volume wheel, and plugged it in. The speaker coughed. Static rolled out soft at first, then spreading until the room felt occupied. Daniel turned the tuning knob, fishing for anything. The tale of a French ballad, a burst of German news, a cathedral choir that faded like breath on glass. He nudged the dial past 101, 102, then 103.6. The static thickened, a woven hiss. Beneath it, something like a hum, not musical but deliberate, as if the air had swallowed a word and was trying to say it back. Daniel froze. The desk lamp seemed to dim, as if the room leaned closer. Then a voice emerged, shaped from the static, soft, cold, and terribly intimate. Daniel. His hand jerked. He glanced toward the door, half expecting a prank, a friend with a speaker. No one. Only rain and the sigh of the building. "Who is this?" he said, trying to pitch his voice to skepticism and managing only thin. The voice did not hurry. "You opened the wire cage on your grandmother's balcony and let the sparrow go. She told you not to. You did it anyway." And the storm cleared. His mouth went dry. That memory lived in a sealed box age 7, whispering sorry to a bird that should never have been penned. His grandmother smiling in that way that forgave and scolded at once. She died 3 winters later. He had never told anyone. "This is some kind of stunt," he said. "Pirate radio? Who are you?" The voice smoothed into the static, then returned nearer. "I am a station that does not forget, Blackwood." Daniel frowned instinctively. The word carried weight in Ravenshollow, an old local myth like the chapel ruins or the white stag in the woods. Blackwood radio station burned in 1999, shut forever after an on-air incident the town never fully agreed on. Children dared each other to break in. Adults shook their heads and changed the subject. "It's decommissioned," Daniel said, because fact felt like a weapon. "There's no power to the hill. Silence isn't death," the voice murmured. "You will understand at 12:03. Look beneath your window." He checked the clock on the shelf. 12:02. He didn't intend to wait. He intended to laugh and twist the dial elsewhere, climb into bed and turn his back on the window like a rational person. Instead, he stood, drawn by a child's compulsion, to peek at the thing under the bed. Rain crisped against the glass. The street lamp across the lane hiccuped and held. At 12:03, the puddle below the lamp shivered and 2 footprints spread in the water, as if pressed by invisible weight. Nah, merely shapes. Tread marks. The edge where sole meets heel. Depth as if someone had leaned forward, mid-step. No figure. No sound. The prints darkened and held. He flinched backward and slammed the sash down. The radio hissed, with what might have been amusement. He yanked the plug from the socket. The static died. Relief spooled out of him. Then the radio glowed, a faint, emberish pulse behind the speaker cloth. Impossible. with the cord slack on the floor. The hair on his arms lifted, as if the air had shifted from a room to a receiver. The voice came back without the device, like it had found a shorter route. I am the Blackwood station. Off air since 1999, it said, almost pleased. But a frequency isn't a building. Daniel scraped up whatever courage sarcasm approximates. If you're a frequency, pick a song. The chuckle in response did not belong in a human throat. Songs come later. First, we listen. The city listens. The country listens. You, Daniel, are already listening. That is enough. Heavy steps thudded up the communal stairwell, his downstairs neighbor hauling flower crates after a late bake. The sound snapped the spell, or maybe gave Daniel an excuse to pretend it had. He snatched the radio, wound the cord around it, shoved it into his wardrobe beneath sweaters that suddenly felt too thin, too mortal. The glow died at last. He washed his face at the sink, the water metallic and cold, and told himself 3 times that he was tired, easily spooked, suggestible in storms. He told himself a 4th time as he lay down. At 12:11, the desk lamp flicked itself off. From the wardrobe, through sweaters and wood, a low pulse beat once. He slept badly, and when he dreamed, the dream had a sound. Shh, a see-through wire. Morning arrived, scrubbed and pale. The bakery smell climbed the stairs, warm enough to make the storm seem like a story someone exaggerated. Daniel packed his books as if packing could make a boundary around the night, shrugged into a coat, and crossed the square to Street Alden's College. In the cafe by the quad, Michael Carter had already colonized a table with his elbows in opinions. He was tall, handsome, in a way that had made life easier than it should be, and loud in a way that had taught life to keep doing so. He waved a croissant like a flag. You look like a ghost just told you you're boring, Michael said. Sit down and let me fix it with caffeine. Clara Hughes sat opposite, a notebook open, her handwriting precise and unhurried. She had a librarian's stare, the kind that filed you a second after you were seen, and a habit of noticing the wrong details for your comfort. Eleanor Price warmed her hands around tea, her rosary coiled in her pocket and thumbed smooth. She wore kindness the way others wore perfume. Daniel. Saturday. He opened his mouth to lie and found he didn't have the energy. I picked up the old radio last night. Michael groaned. The antique? You are an 80-year-old man, trapped in what are you now, 21? It spoke, Daniel said. He wasn't going to dramatize it. He wasn't going to add anything. He didn't need to. Clara's pen paused. Spoke how? Like it knew me, he said. Like it knew things. He described the sparrow. He described 12-3. He described the footprints. Michael laughed the laugh of someone trying out denial like a suit jacket. Great. Perfect. We need this. We've been dying for a story that isn't a professor's divorce. We'll test it tonight. Eleanor's eyes were on Daniel's face, not his words. Did you pray? She asked gently. I unplugged it, he said, and wished the answer were different. Clara drummed her pen against the rim of her cup. My grandfather used to talk about Blackwood Station, she said. He said the fire didn't take the voice with it. He used to change channels in church if the priest's mic cracked, he said. The sound of it set his teeth on edge. Urban legends, Michael declared. Which makes them urban content. Midnight test? My place or his? He jerked his thumb at Daniel. Mine, Daniel said, before sense could barricade the word in his throat. He needed to prove the night wrong, even if proving meant finding out there was something to prove. Michael slapped the table. Done. Bring the relic. We'll tune to 103.6 together. Like a seance for people with hobbies. Eleanor winced at the joke, then smiled, chastising herself for superstition. We'll go, she said. But if anything, if it's ugly, we stop. Promise? Michael raised a brow. If it starts reading my search history, I'll burn the building down. Promise. Clara capped her pen. I'm bringing a recorder, she said, and rules. She slid a page across. She had written them while they talked, neat and brisk. 1. No names spoken aloud after midnight. 2. No repeating what you hear. 3. No opening the window at 12. 3. 4. If it speaks to you, do not answer. Apotropaic ritual, by administrative list, Michael said dryly. Very you. Very us, Clara returned, meaning, this is how we survive exams. Families, nights. Daniel folded the page and put it in his pocket. He felt the shape of it against his thigh all day, like a talisman, like a bribe to the future. The afternoon stretched. Professors lectured about Augustine and guilt, about the invention of Europe, about how sound travels through stone better than through glass. Rain tempered into a mist that made the campus look like it had been set for a photograph a century ago and simply kept. At 11:30, they climbed the bakery stairs. The corridors smelled of sugar, damped by weather. Daniel's attic was small bed, desk, bookcase, the wardrobe that pretended not to exist. The radio sat in the center of the desk, the cord wound around it like a leash. Michael set down crisps and ginger beer like offerings to a mercurial god. Clara placed a tiny digital recorder beside the radio, then checked its batteries with the anxiety of a surgeon. Eleanor stood by the window and peered out. The street lamp below trembled in the wind. Ground rules, Clara said, voice steady. She repeated them. Michael rolled his eyes. Humor the witch, he said. What's the worst that happens? We get bored and roast Daniel for being dramatic. Daniel unwound the cord and plugged in the radio. The socket sparked faintly, or maybe his nerves invented it. The speaker breathed. The static came, comfortingly banal. He ran the dial up and down to show them the world still worked classical from Vienna. A cheerful man selling garden seeds in Sussex. The snap of a football match from somewhere across a border. He set the knob on 103.6. Everything in the room seemed to shrink, ceilings a hand lower, corners nearer, breath audible. The static here was not the static everywhere else. It had grain. It had a body. If he narrowed his eyes, Daniel could almost believe it had a pulse. Say something, Michael told it, grinning into the recorder. This is your big moment. Clara glared. Rule 4. Michael spread his hands. What? The clock ticked toward midnight. Each second a nail tapped gently into wood. Eleanor took her rosary out and didn't pretend it was for anything other than fear. Daniel's fingers were steady on the dial because he trained them to be. The radio spoke. Not a throat. Not language, at first. A heartbeat threaded through the hiss. Thud. 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 It was wrong in a way that made Daniel's gums ache. It was too slow. It sounded like it came from behind him, through him, under the floorboards, everywhere but the speaker. Michael's smile thinned. Neat trick. The heartbeat withdrew, and in its place, a voice arranged itself, building syllables like a spider builds a web, patient, confident, precise. Michael Carter. Michael flinched. You took a watch from your father's case, at closing. You hid it beneath your mattress. You told yourself you were borrowing it to feel the weight of being a man. Michael's mouth opened, closed. His hands, which could make bravado from anything, forgot how to. The voice turned, and in doing so, changed temperature. Clara Hughes, you write letters on the last day of every month to a man buried in Street Agnes Cemetery. You fold the paper until your hands hurt. You leave them under the ivy at the left corner of his stone. You wait until the caretaker looks away. Clara did not breathe. Daniel stared at her, as if the voice had taken her and left a sculpture of salt behind. She had told no one about the letters. He knew because there was no one to tell. Clara's life was tidy drawers, not confessions. Eleanor's beads clicked softly. She shut her eyes. In nomine, the voice hovered above her, almost kindly. Eleanor Price. You stopped praying for your mother to recover when you heard her sobbing into her pillow. You prayed for speed instead. You love God. You loved your mother more. Eleanor bent, as if a string tethering her to the ceiling had been cut. Her tears came without sound. A clean proof. The room waited. Daniel felt the page of rules go useless in his pocket. He felt the radio turn its face to him. He wanted to say don't, and found he had no say. Daniel Whitmore, the voice said, and did not elaborate. A small mercy, a larger threat. You already belong to me. The lamp burst with a pop. Darkness slammed the room. Something scurried in Daniel's spine, fear descending his vertebrae like it knew the way. Unplug it, Michael barked, slipping on words as if they were wet stones. It doesn't matter, Daniel said, surprised to hear himself answer calmly. It doesn't care about the plug. Clara's recorder continued to run, the tiny red light a heartbeat of its own. Outside, the wind worried the gutters, and the lane answered with a wet slap of leaves. The breathing began. Not theirs. Too many. Too close. The kind of breathing you hear when standing in a crowd with your eyes closed, soft, ragged, human, varied, and yet there were only 4 of them in the room. The sound came from the corners, from the wardrobe, from the space beneath the bed, from above the ceiling. Eleanor's hand found Daniel's sleeve and didn't pretend it had meant to do anything else. We should stop, she whispered. The radio's voice filled the whisper's shape. You cannot stop a listener, it said, bright with satisfaction. You can only be one. The desk, an ordinary pine thing his father had bought from a flea market, vibrated. Not much, not a cinematic quake. Just enough that the pencil rolled and thumped to the edge and fell. The sound was heartbreakingly small. It made Daniel want to apologize to something he could not see. He reached for the dial anyway. The voice led him. Return tomorrow. It said sweetly, a malaise and a lullaby. Or don't. We will be in the air either way. And then it left them, as powerfully and simply as a person stepping through a door. The static softened into an ordinary hiss. The lamp blinked back to life. The breath in the room thinned to the 4 they were born with. Michael inhaled so deeply he choked on it. We're done, he said, in the tone of a judge who worries his verdict is suggestion. We're done, and this was stupid. Clara picked up her recorder and stared at the running time as if it named a killer. We need to listen, she said, and corrected herself. I need to listen. Later. Not here. Eleanor pressed her sleeve to her eyes. I've felt seen, she said, horrified by the word. Not by God. That was the worst part. Daniel walked to the window. He didn't intend to. He had promised Clara's page that he would not. He put his fingers to the latch and lifted it an inch, just enough to let the rain speak through the crack. Below, in the puddle by the street lamp, 2 fresh footprints bloomed and settled. He lowered the window without a sound. Tomorrow, he said, unfamiliar to himself. We go to Blackwood Hill. Michael made a noise that might have been a laugh. To do what? Interview a ruin? To see if the ruin is listening, Daniel said. Clara uncapped her pen, and in the dim light after midnight, she wrote a new rule on the page. They did not sleep. In every pause between sentences, in every sip of cooling tea, in every stretch of stillness where a day ordinarily waits like a cat on a windowsill, the 4 of them heard it. Shh. Not wind, not rain, not blood. Something else, tuned just under human hearing, practicing being heard. Midnight again. The air in Daniel's attic felt denser, as if the walls had leaned in closer overnight. The old radio sat at the center of his desk, waiting. Michael lounged back in his chair, crisp packet crumpled in one hand, phone in the other. Come on then. Let's hear our ghost DJ. Clara set her recorder beside the radio, pressing the red button. Eleanor's rosary gleamed faintly in the lamplight. Daniel's hand trembled as he turned the dial to 103.6. Static. At first. Then the same heartbeat as before. Heavy, hollow, unnatural. It didn't sound like it belonged to a chest. It sounded like it came from the walls. The voice slid through the hiss. Michael Carter. Michael straightened, smirk slipping. You stole from your father's shop. The silver watch lies under your mattress. Michael's jaw twitched. Shut up, he whispered. The voice ignored him. Clara Hughes. You still write letters to the grave in Street Agnes. You hope the dead man reads. Clara's lips trembled. She stared at the recorder as if it had betrayed her. Then, softly, cruelly, Eleanor Price, you begged not for your mother's life, but for her pain to end. Eleanor clutched her rosary until her knuckles whitened, tears spilling silently. Finally, the room waited for Daniel. He shook his head violently. No, the voice hissed with satisfaction. Daniel Whitmore, you already belong to me. The lamp above them popped, plunging the attic into darkness. Then came the sound that froze all four. Breathing. Dozens of others. Close. Surrounding them. The air itself seemed alive with listeners. Turn it off, Michael barked. Daniel yanked the plug, but the radio kept glowing faintly, its light like an open eye, and the voice whispered, More listeners are tuning in. Can you hear them breathing? The four of them froze. In that tiny attic, they could. By morning, the town buzzed with rumor. Someone had posted a clip online, distorted audio, the heartbeat, whispers naming Michael, Clara, Eleanor. None of them had uploaded it. Yet it spread fast, like the town itself wanted to listen. We didn't share it, Clara said, pale, recorder clutched in her hand. It shared itself. Daniel slammed his fist against the cafe table. We end this. We go to the ruins. That evening, lanterns in hand, they trudged beyond Ravenshallow's cobbled streets. The fog thickened with each step, curling like pale fingers around trees and stones. The silhouette of Blackwood radio station rose from the hillside, a charred husk, its windows shattered like blind eyes. The smell of burned timber still clung, decades old. Michael forced the scorched door open. It groaned like something alive. Inside, the control room remained. Dust lay thick, but faint power hummed. On a cracked desk, a reel-to-reel tape spun backward, impossible without electricity. Speakers crackled, then laughed. Clara whispered, It's alive. The voice filled the air, stronger here, resonant with the walls. Welcome back, listeners. The control room smelled of ash and iron, as if the fire that gutted Blackwood Station had never stopped burning. Wallpaper peeled in strips, but the faded logo still clung to the wall. 103.6 Blackwood FM. Daniel stepped forward. What are you? The static shifted, then words. I am what remains when truth is spoken without consent. I am the hunger behind every secret. Michael grabbed an iron bar from the rubble and slammed it against the console. Sparks burst, glass shattered, but the voice only laughed. The shelves trembled. Dust fell. Old tapes cracked open, spilling magnetic ribbons that slithered across the floor like serpents. Clara backed away, her recorder shaking in her hands. It's feeding on us, on what we know, on what we hide. The voice swelled, more confident, more alive. Every ear, every secret, every fear makes me stronger. And now, Ravenshollow listens. You've already spread me. Eleanor's face drained of color. It's not just us. The town, it's already infected. The console lights flickered, dials spinning on their own. Somewhere deep in the walls, a heartbeat echoed, shaking the floor. Michael shouted over the noise. Then how do we kill it? The voice answered, almost fondly. You can't kill a frequency. You can only share it. They stumbled up the rusted stairwell toward the skeletal broadcast tower above the station. The structure leaned like a dying giant. Its beams rusted, wires trembling in the storm. Lightning forked the sky. Each strike hit the tower's tip, as if drawn deliberately. The air vibrated with energy, the hairs on their arms standing straight. We take down the tower, Daniel shouted. Cut the signal at the source. Michael swung the iron bar again and again, smashing rusted beams. Sparks shot like fireflies. Clara and Eleanor shoved rubble aside, clearing space. The tower groaned, its spine breaking. With a deafening shriek, the entire structure collapsed, crashing into the ruins below. The moment it struck, the static cut. For the first time in days, silence fell. Ravenshollow lay still, the fog hanging heavy but quiet. The four of them stood panting, rain soaking their faces, unable to believe it was over. Michael dropped the iron bar, laughing nervously. That's it. We did it. But Daniel wasn't sure. He stared into the fog, into the silence that felt too heavy, too deliberate. The storm clouds parted briefly, showing the pale face of the moon. The night was silent. Too silent. They staggered back into Ravenshollow, mud on their boots, the storm easing into a mist. The town looked the same: cobbled lanes, shuttered windows, the church bell tower standing pale against the fog. For a fleeting moment, they believed they had won. Then Clara froze. Listen. From the cafe ahead came a sound. Static. Not from the rain, not from the street lamps, but from inside. They peered through the window. Dozens of townsfolk stood transfixed, phones glowing in their hands. Each screen pulsed with the same words. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome, listeners. The cafe speakers hissed, and then voices spilled out not music, not news, but secrets. Personal confessions. Sins spoken in the trembling tones of the very people standing there. Their faces drained of color. Daniel's stomach turned. It's not dead. It's everywhere now. Eleanor clutched her rosary, tears streaking her cheeks. We didn't kill it. We set it free. Michael swore under his breath. It doesn't need the tower. It's in the air, in the phones, in the web. Clara pressed her hands to the glass, whispering, We're transmitters. Just by listening, we carried it. Here. Daniel looked at his reflection in the cafe window. His own face stared back, pale, hollow-eyed. But behind his shoulder stood the faceless figure again, closer than ever, as if it had finally stepped into his world. The static deepened, crawling under their skin. Then the voice came, not from radios or devices, but from the air itself. The broadcast never ends, and now you are all part of the show. The townsfolk turned as one. Their mouths opened, releasing a hiss of static. The fog rolled down the street like smoke, swallowing Ravenshollow whole. By dawn, Ravenshollow no longer belonged to itself. Windows glowed with pale light, every device hijacked, every screen showing the same flickering signal. 103.6 Blackwood FM. News traveled fast. Reports surfaced of strange broadcasts bleeding into homes across Europe. Whispers, confessions, impossible knowledge. A curse disguised as radio. The four of them gathered in the square, exhausted, broken. Daniel whispered, It doesn't need towers or tapes anymore. It only needs ears. Clara trembled. Then anyone who hears it is infected. Eleanor finished, clutching her rosary so tightly the beads cut her skin. Michael shook his head in disbelief. We're screwed. The whole world's screwed. Silence fell again, thick and suffocating. Then the voice returned, closer than ever, seeping from the fog, from the ground, from the breath in their lungs. You've been listening all along. Daniel's heart stopped. The voice wasn't just speaking to them. It was speaking to you. Yes, you. The one who stayed. The one who followed every word. The static swelled, vibrating in bones not your own. Congratulations, you are part of the frequency now. At 12:03 tonight. Check beneath your window. The footprints will be waiting. And then silence. Only your breath remains.